Welcome to The Explainer. You know, we all deal with setbacks, right? Well, today, we're actually going to build a practical toolkit, a way to turn those super frustrating moments into stepping stones for real growth. So let's start with a question we can all relate to. What happens when your plan just fails? I mean, we've all been there. You know that feeling? When you're just completely thrown off balance because things did not go your way? Like maybe a project you poured your heart and soul into gets shot down. It's so frustrating, right? But here's the thing. That doesn't have to be where the story ends. Not at all. All right, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the anatomy of a setback. Then we'll get into the power of asking the right question. After that, I've got a super practical 10-minute reframe for you. We'll talk about why it works, and then we'll wrap up with your next step. Sound good? Let's dive in. All right, section 1, the anatomy of a setback. Look, the frustration when something goes wrong, it's real. And it's intense, but it doesn't have to be the end of the story. You know, when we hit a wall like that, it's so easy to get sucked into this spiral of negative thinking. And that spiral, it can make you feel completely and utterly stuck. Yeah, our first gut reaction a lot of the time is to see that setback as a final judgment, like a big fail stamped on our forehead. We just think, well, that's it. It's completely out of my hands now. And that kind of mindset, it's got a name. It's basically a form of fatalism, this belief that everything is just beyond our control. And thinking like that, it can literally paralyze you. So the big question is, how do we get unstuck? And that brings us right to our next section, the power of a question. The key here is a really simple, but honestly profound shift in perspective. It's called reframing, and it's basically the skill of changing how you see a situation. You stop being a victim of it, and you start being a student of it. And this right here, this breaks that mental shift down perfectly. On one side, you've got setback as failure. That's the dead end. It's a judgment, a big red stop sign. But on the other side, you've got setback as feedback, and that is totally different. It's a lesson, it's data you can use to get better. It's a reason to adjust your course, not abandon the ship. The big takeaway here is this. Stop seeing roadblocks and start seeing clues. So what's the tool that actually makes this shift happen? It's asking yourself constructive questions. So instead of just stewing in frustration over that rejected project, you pivot. You start asking things like, okay, what can I actually learn from this? Or how can this experience make me stronger? And maybe, how is this going to shape how I do things next time? See what's happening? These questions take that kind of abstract idea of feedback and turn it into something real, something you can act on. All right, so we've got the why down. Now let's get to the how. This is the fun part. Section 3, your 10-minute reframe. This is a super simple but really powerful practice that you can use literally anytime, anywhere to get your balance back. The whole thing takes just 10 minutes. That's it. And it's broken down into these 4 really simple steps. You're going to pause, reflect, reframe, and then end with gratitude. So let's walk through each one of these, and we'll stick with our example of that rejected project to see how it works. Okay, step 1, for just 2 minutes. Pause. The moment you get that bad news and you feel that hot wave of frustration wash over you, just stop. Close your eyes. Take 5 slow, deep breaths. The whole point here is super simple. You're hitting the brakes on that instant negative reaction. You're just creating a tiny pocket of stillness for yourself. Okay, next up, for 3 minutes, you're going to reflect. And this is where you pull out those constructive questions we talked about. You ask yourself, okay, for real, what can I learn from this? Maybe the feedback you got was that your presentation was a little confusing. Hey, that's gold for next time. Right there, you're actively moving your focus away from the pain of the setback and toward the potential for growth. And now for step 3, the reframe itself. Give yourself 5 minutes for this one. Now you ask a different question. What opportunity does this present? Maybe this rejection actually frees you up to work on that other, way more exciting idea you had on the back burner. And here's the most important part. You identify one single actionable step forward. Just one, something small, like putting a 30-minute brainstorm on your calendar for that new idea. That's it. And finally, step 4, for just 1 minute, you end with gratitude. Just acknowledge one thing you're grateful for in that moment. Seriously, it could be anything. Maybe it's the fact that you got honest feedback. Maybe it's just the delicious coffee you're drinking. This one tiny act helps lower your stress, and it refocuses your energy back on the positive. It's what gives you that little boost of confidence to actually take that next step. So, why does this simple 10-minute practice actually work so well? I mean, what's the magic here? That brings us to section 4, why reframing works. And the cool thing is, this isn't just some feel-good idea. It's actually backed up by some really powerful frameworks for resilience from both psychology and a lot of spiritual traditions. You know, a lot of spiritual traditions have this really beautiful way of looking at things. This idea that what you call delay, heaven calls preparation. Think about that. This perspective completely reframes a delay. It's not a denial, it's not a no, it's a purposeful pause, a moment where maybe you're being shaped for something even better. But, and this is so important, this is not about just sitting back and passively waiting for things to happen. This slide shows the difference perfectly. On one side, you have fatalism. That's just giving up, surrendering, because you feel like it's all out of your hands. But on the other side, you have this concept from Islamic tradition called ikhtiyar, and that means active effort. It's the principle that you have to genuinely try, using every resource you have to aim for the best possible outcome. And this idea builds even further with another concept called tawakkul. Now, this often gets translated as just trust in God, but there's a really critical piece to it. It's an active trust that comes after you've already put in your maximum effort. It doesn't come before. So trust is the final step you take. It's not an excuse to do nothing. And this all lines up so beautifully with the idea that the future, well, it isn't some fixed railroad track that you're stuck on. It's more like an open possibility. What you do, your efforts, your choices, the way you reframe things, it all genuinely influences the outcome. So destiny isn't something you just wait around for. It's something you actually get to help create. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, right? The what, the how, and the why of reframing. So that brings us to our final section, your next step, how to really turn these setbacks into stepping stones. So let's just boil it down to the essentials. First, setbacks aren't failures, they're feedback. Say it with me, feedback. Second, you now have a simple 10-minute practice, pause, reflect, reframe, gratitude to totally reset your mindset. And third, remember that real trust, real faith comes after you've put in your best effort. The bottom line is, you now have a real, tangible tool to turn those painful full stops into powerful forward momentum. And so that leaves us with just one final thought, one question for you. Think about your own life right now. What is one setback, could be big, could be small, that you can try this 10-minute reframe on today? Because, the real power isn't in just knowing about this stuff. It's in actually doing it. Thanks for joining me on The Explainer.